Okay, let's unpack this. Picture this. Instead of, the usual banks or funds deciding where your money goes, imagine decentralized AI algorithms actually competing, like battling it out in real time to find the absolute best returns for assets.
Yeah, it sounds a bit like science fiction, doesn't it? But it's a vision that one specific project is really trying to build right now.
Taking that core Bittensor idea, incentivized competitive intelligence.
Exactly, and applying it smack dab in the middle of, well, the high-stakes world of financial yield
A
optimization.
tangible problem.
Yeah,
With, potentially significant real-world impact.
definitely.
And that's exactly what we're doing a deep dive into today. We're focusing on Bittensor Subnet 10, also known as the Sturdy Subnet.
And our guide for this exploration is a pretty detailed investment analysis. It really digs into what SN10 is, how it works, its potential, and crucially, the significant hurdles and risks it faces. It lays it all out.
So our mission here is to kind of cut through that complexity, pull out the most important insights from this analysis. We want you to walk away understanding the core ideas, the potential upside, and just as importantly, the critical challenges, the stuff that really needs attention.
Think of it as your essential shortcut, maybe. Getting informed about this really fascinating intersection of, well, DeFi and AI.
So what problem is SN10 actually trying to solve here? The analysis, it points out that maximizing yield, finding the best returns, it's often inefficient, right, and centralized, even in parts of DeFi sometimes.
Right. Dynamically allocating assets across all these different lending pools or token opportunities. It's complex. It's constantly changing. SN10 basically aims to decentralize that whole process and hopefully optimize it.
Yeah, you've got all these places to put capital, and keeping track of where the best yield is second by second, that's a huge task.
So SN10 is built as this decentralized, autonomous, miner-driven yield farming fund. Or yield optimizer, maybe is a better term,
Wow.
all operating on Bittensor.
And it's designed with several different groups in mind.
Yeah, exactly. For end users, maybe someone using a third-party app like the initial Sturdy protocol that plugs into SN10, the goal is accessing potentially better yields found by these competing AI-driven strategies.
Okay. And then for the miners.
They're incentivized with TAO rewards. Their job is to build and deploy the most effective asset allocation algorithms they can come up with.
Right. And validators, they're earning TAO too.
Yes, they earn TAO by accurately scoring those miner algorithms. Their role is to figure out, based on the data, which miner would have generated the best yield with their proposed strategy.
So it's about measuring performance. Objectively, hopefully.
And then for the wider Bittensor ecosystem, SN10 adds a potentially valuable DeFi building block, a primitive, as the analysis calls it, one that could work with real assets and maybe interact with other subnets, perhaps subnets providing financial data or something similar.
So the specific service here is getting these algorithms to generate optimized asset allocations. And the output isn't just like theoretical research.
No, it's meant to be actionable. They generate yield optimizers, basically, the intelligence needed by smart contracts to actually manage deposits into different pools. Initially focused on Ethereum lending pools and also Bittensor Alpha token pools.
And this is where that real-world link comes in. The analysis really emphasizes this.
Yeah, it's key. The intelligence SN10 generates those optimized strategies it's intended for use by third-party apps, like the Sturdy protocol as the first example, to actually manage real assets on networks like Ethereum.
That gives SN10 a really interesting kind of dual nature, doesn't it?
It does. It's both a testing ground where AI algorithms compete and evolve.
Like an AI arena.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
And also a functional DeFi tool designed for practical use, with actual capital potentially involved.
But that also means it's pretty dependent on external systems.
Absolutely. It needs reliable data feeds, oracles, as they're called, and it needs to talk across chains, especially to interact with those Ethereum pools.
So its performance isn't just about how smart the miners are.
Exactly. The analysis is clear on this. Its ultimate success is heavily influenced by external stuff, like the liquidity in those underlying pools, their security, general market conditions. If the pools themselves aren't great, or if they're risky, SN10's potential is limited no matter how good the algorithms are.
Okay, let's get into the engine room then. How does this competitive system actually work? The analysis talks about a core mechanism, something called the allocate assets synapse.
Right. Think of the synapse as just the specific language or protocol they use to communicate within the subnet. Validators are sort of like dispatchers. They gather info on assets and pools and send this out as a challenge to the miners.
Got it. So miners get this data, including how much needs to be allocated, and their job is to propose a strategy, how much goes where to maximize the yield.
That's it. The analysis mentions there's a basic naive allocation algorithm included, sort of a default. But to really compete, to earn significant TAO, miners need to develop their own, much more sophisticated algorithms. It's basically a race to build the smartest allocation logic. Proprietary, maybe?
Makes sense. You can't just guess and win. Now, the validator's scoring role, that sounds absolutely crucial.
It is. They generate these requests for miners, often synthetic requests, which are based on real data pulled from pools on Ethereum mainnet, using a specific registry file, the analysis notes, and also from Bittensor, using data from an archive node. That's important for accurate historical scoring.
Archive node holds the full history, right? Not just the latest block.
Exactly. And the analysis also mentions validators can potentially run an API, maybe sell access for organic requests coming directly from external users or apps.
Okay, so validators send challenges, miners respond with allocations, validators score them. How exactly do they measure who wins? What's the scoring based on?
Primarily, it's based on the potential yield their proposed allocation would have generated over a specific time window. These scoring requests happen pretty often, like roughly every 15 minutes. And the analysis highlights two key penalties baked into the scoring. One is for allocations that are too similar to others.
To encourage originality.
Right. To foster diverse strategies, not just everyone copying the leader. And the other penalty is for slow responses, usually anything over 3 seconds. Speed matters, too.
That originality check seems vital if the goal is that emergent to decentralized intelligence you mentioned.
Definitely. And in terms of data, they're dealing with large numbers, asset amounts. It follows standard ERC20 decimal conventions, the analysis says. Validators need to constantly pull fresh data from Ethereum smart contracts and that Bittensor archive node.
So the key tech innovations here are really that decentralized competitive AI setup for yield optimization. The mechanism trying to link it to real assets and its ability to handle both Ethereum and Bittensor assets.
That sums it up pretty well.
Yep.
And of course, there are technical requirements for participants. The analysis mentions specific Python versions, Conda recommended, and hardware specs detailed somewhere. Validators especially need pretty robust infrastructure to keep up with fetching all that data accurately from both chains. It's not trivial.
Okay, let's switch gears to security. This feels absolutely paramount, especially if this subnet could eventually direct real money.
It cannot be stressed enough. The analysis definitely acknowledges how critical security is. However, and this is a big however, it raises a very significant concern. The source material does not explicitly state that independent security audits have been completed specifically for the Sturdy Subnet 10 code base and its mechanisms.
Wow, okay, that is a major finding from the analysis, a potential red flag, you could say. So it's not enough if, say, the Sturdy protocol that uses SN10 is audited. The subnet itself needs its own audit.
That's precisely what the analysis implies is needed. The core logic needs vetting. It does mention that miners are advised to use firewalls, standard DDoS mitigation. And it notes there haven't been any reported security incidents for SN10 so far. But so far is doing a lot of work there.
Right. And the system inherently depends on the security of everything it touches. Ethereum, Bittensor, those underlying lending pools.
Yep, that's a clear dependency risk. And beyond that, there's the inherent challenge of validating the security and effectiveness of all these different miner algorithms. They could be anything, really. Plus, ensuring the validator scoring is robust and can't be gamed. That originality check helps, but it's complex.
And because the endgame, via integrations like Sturdy, is directing real assets, any security flaw, any bug, could lead to direct, possibly huge financial losses for users.
Exactly. Which is why the analysis strongly concludes that comprehensive independent audits covering SN10's own code, its interactions, potential attack vectors, those are absolutely essential. Confidence hinges on that.
Okay. Essential, but according to the source, not confirmed as completed yet.
Got it.
So let's look at the battlefield, the industry, the competition. SN10 is in the DeFi yield optimization space. It's already crowded, right?
Oh, yeah. It's a big market and projected to grow massively. The analysis throws around some huge numbers, like potentially over $1 trillion by 2034, high growth rates cited, driven by, the constant demand for yield, crypto adoption growing, and people liking automated strategies.
So huge opportunity, but sounds like intense competition. Thinking about those market forces, like Porter's analysis mentioned in the source, why is it so tough?
Well, rivalry is just fierce. Existing players are battling hard for user deposits, for talent, for brand recognition. Innovation is super fast. The threat of substitutes is also high plankedly. Lots of ways to chase yield inside and outside Bittensor. New entrants, it's tough. Tech is complex, though open source helps a bit. But building trust, attracting liquidity, that's hard.
And the power dynamics shift around. Miners have high power because performance depends on them. Users, via integrators, also have high power they can just leave if yields aren't good.
Right. Suppliers like compute or data, less power. The underlying lending protocols SN10 uses, moderate power. And the Bittensor network itself demands performance from SN10.
Looking at specific competitors outside Bittensor, the analysis named some big ones. Yearn Finance.
Yeah, Yearn's a pioneer. Very established brand known for their automated vault strategies. And importantly, they've had audits by reputable firms. They're a major player in automated solutions.
Convex Finance, too.
Convex is huge, but very specialized in optimizing yields from Curve Finance. Massive TVL, but deeply tied to Curve's fate. They did have a bug needing a redeployment once, the analysis notes. Dominant in their niche, though.
And there are others. Beefy Finance, multi-chain auto compounding.
Yep. Beefy, Auto Farm, lots of aggregators across different chains with various strategies. It's a busy space.
Plus, indirectly, things like Lido or Rocket Pool and liquid staking. They're competing for the same yield-seeking capital.
Exactly, though their yield source is different staking derivatives, not lending pools usually, but they are audited, established players vying for user funds.
So against all that, what's SN10's proposed differentiator? How does it stand out?
The key difference, according to the analysis, is this dynamic, competitive marketplace of miners. Instead of preset strategies updated by governance, like many competitors, SN10 relies on miners constantly developing and deploying new, hopefully superior algorithms.
So the core idea of the hypothesis is that this decentralized network of competing minds can adapt faster, find better opportunities than more static or centrally managed approaches.
That's the bet. And that originality scoring we talked about is crucial. It has to encourage genuine innovation, not just copying, for this model to work.
How does it align with the real yield narrative in DeFi?
It aligns pretty well, actually. Miners are scored based on the actual yield their strategies would generate from real lending pools, so it's tied to economic activity. The transparency from tools like Wannabe mentioned in the source helps verify this. The challenge, though, is separating the value added by the miner algorithm versus the base yield the pool offered anyway. That attribution can be tricky.
Okay, so can this unique approach actually lead to a sustainable advantage? Using that VRIO framework from the analysis, is it valuable?
The analysis says yes. It addresses a clear need, yield, rewards participants, could improve capital efficiency, and has that real-world integration path. Seems valuable.
Rare.
Potentially, yes. This specific model networked competitive AI under Bittensor's unique incentives, that's pretty rare. The deep integration with Bittensor and the direct link to Sturdy managing real assets are also fairly unique right now.
Costly to imitate.
The analysis argues yes. Replicating Bittensor itself is a massive task. Building that ecosystem of skilled miners and validators takes time, money, network effects. Trust is hard to replicate. However, there's a caveat. Specific algorithms might be imitable if the originality checks aren't perfect. So continuous innovation is key to staying ahead of copycats.
And is it organized to capture value?
Seems so. Roles are defined, TAO rewards are built in via DTAO, transparency tools exist, and that Yuma DCG backing provides significant organizational resources and network access. Governance evolution will be key long-term, though.
So the potential for sustainable advantage is there, but it really hinges on a few big things actually happening.
Exactly. It depends entirely on whether that decentralized miner network consistently creates better yield strategies than the competition. That's number one. It needs network effects attracting skilled people and attracting user capital via apps like Sturdy. It needs to leverage Bittensor's strengths, maintain rock-solid security, and keep adapting fast.
It really sounds like the core bet, based on this analysis, is on emergent decentralized intelligence.
Yeah.
Can this competitive swarm intelligence truly outperform established methods?
That's the fundamental wager. If that collective intelligence doesn't deliver genuinely superior, measurable results, it's going to struggle against the big established players.
Let's look at the business model itself. How does value actually get created and move around here? Who are the key players?
The analysis lists miners, validators, the Sturdy protocol as the first user, Yuma DCG providing that strategic backing, and the underlying Ethereum protocols SN10 interacts with, potentially others later.
And the key activities keeping it running.
Miners developing, testing, running algorithms, validators creating challenges, scoring performance, originality, speed, the core team maintaining the code. Bittensor distributing TAO, and community building, which is always important.
Key resources needed: the miner algorithms themselves, though maybe proprietary, the network's collective intelligence and compute, the code base, TAO incentives, and its growing reputation and community.
Value propositions vary. TAO rewards for miners' validators, potentially higher yields for end users via Sturdy, and a useful DeFi service for the Bittensor network.
Target customers: TAO holders staking in the subnet, DeFi users seeking yield through integrating apps, maybe other developers or protocols looking to use the intelligence.
Channels for engagement: Bittensor network itself, the website, sturdysubnet.org, GitHub, community channels, though the analysis mentions verifying specific active SN10 channels, and partnerships like Sturdy.
Costs: ongoing development, validator ops, nodes, data, gas fees, marketing, community stuff, and the TAO emissions are an opportunity cost for the whole Bittensor network.
Now, value capture. How does the money or reward flow? It's primarily TAO emissions from Bittensor distributed via that DTAO model. The analysis breaks it down. 41% of the subnet's TAO share goes to miners, 41% to validators, and 18% goes to operators.
Right, and you mentioned SN10 being older directs more of its earnings back to its own stakers.
Yeah, that's a positive point for its internal tokenomics noted in the analysis. It benefits those directly supporting SN10 more compared to newer subnets, still contributing more to the root network.
And the SN10 alpha token plays into this.
It does. It's the representation of stake in the subnet, capped at 21 million, mirrors TAO halving. Its price reflects the TAO staked relative to alpha supply. That 18% of daily alpha emissions going to operators, though? The analysis flags that as needing more clarity. Who are they? What happens to that alpha? It's a bit unclear from the source.
What about direct revenue beyond TAO?
The main built-in one is that optional validator API, selling access for organic requests. But the analysis thinks it's likely minor initially. Any fee sharing from integrators like Sturdy. Purely speculative based on this source. So long-term sustainability, especially if TAO emissions eventually decrease, really relies on scaling those direct revenue streams somehow.
And how do network effects help build momentum?
They're crucial. Directly. Good miners attract good validators, better performance, more TAO, and good validators attract good miners, fair scoring. Indirectly, more capital using SN10's intelligence, via Sturdy, etc., increases demand, which could boost TAO value or open up those direct revenue paths. Better performance earns more TAO share from Bittensor, creating a positive feedback loop.
But it faces that classic chicken and egg problem, right?
Definitely. Needs skilled miners, but miners need capital flowing through to make it really worthwhile beyond TAO. Capital needs proof of superior yield from those miners. Bootstrapping is key. Maybe initial incentives for miners or Sturdy incentivizing liquidity. That validator API is another potential demand driver, separate from user capital.
Okay, let's try and distill this with a SWOT analysis, focusing on the investment angle like the source does. Strengths:
Innovative AI approach, potential for superior yield, strong TAO incentives, early movers in this Bittensor niche, that real-world link via Sturdy, supports ETH and Bittensor pools, Yuma DCG backing, WannaBe transparency, lots of positives on paper.
Weaknesses:
High technical complexity, heavy reliance on external miner quality and validator reliability. Validator costs, still early stage limited track record. And again, that unclear status of specific independent security audits for SN10 itself, dependence on participant diversity, and unclear core team identity noted in the source.
Opportunities:
Massive DeFi market growth. General interest in AI applied to finance. Potential for more integrations, maybe cross-chain expansion. Growth of Bittensor overall. New financial primitives emerging on Bittensor. And threats. Intense competition, Yearn, Convex, etc. Market volatility. Ethereum gas fees hurting strategy viability. Critically, security vulnerabilities in SN10, Sturdy, or the underlying protocols. Regulatory uncertainty, DeFi, and AI. Minor collusion plagiarism risk, tech obsolescence, and broader Bittensor TAO issues.
That SWOT really drives home how linked its fate is to Bittensor and TAO.
Absolutely. Its strengths leverage Bittensor. Its threats include Bittensor risks.
Let's zoom out one more level, the pestle factors, the broader environment.
Politically, evolving AI rules, patchy crypto regulations globally, geopolitics impacting markets.
Economically, macro trends matter, but TAO price volatility is huge for incentives. Compute cost, funding climate, Ethereum gas fees impacting profitability.
Socially, public attitudes to aid centralization, community strength, ethics and algorithmic finance, DeFi adoption trends.
Technologically, fast pace of AI blockchain change means constant adaptation needed. Platform dependencies, Bittensor, ETH. Security tech is vital. Oracle reliability is a persistent risk.
Legally, Complex areas like data privacy, algorithm IP, smart contract status, potential future compliance needs, AML CFT.
Environmentally, compute energy use, though likely less than proof of work. The analysis highlights that complexity operating in regulatory gray areas at the intersection of DeFi and AI across chains. Yuma DCG backing helps credibility, but doesn't remove those risks.
Okay, let's get back to the specifics, financials, tokenomics, governance. We touched on the DTAO model.
Right, miners validators earn TAO based on performance. SN10 alpha token represents stake, price based on TAO alpha ratio in the reserve, capped at 21M, follows halving.
And that distribution, 41% miners, 41% validators, 18% operators, with SN10 being mature, keeping more earnings for its own stakers.
Value accrues to TAO from demand to stake in successful subnets like SN10. SN10 alpha value comes from performance, attracting stake, perception.
Direct revenue, mainly that validator API, likely small for now. Sustainability long-term might need more direct revenue if TAO emissions fade.
Does the use case fit the problem?
On paper, yes, decentralized yield optimization, but effectiveness boils down to actual performance. Sustainability needs innovation and real capital adoption via integrators.
Team and backers. Sturdy Subnet org on GitHub website exists, but
Yeah, the analysis flags the lack of explicit identification of the core SN10 dev team in the source material. Needs due diligence. Big plus is Yuma DCG backing resources, credibility, network.
and Sturdy Protocol has its own strong backers, Pantera YC.
Right. So the ecosystem is well backed, but clarifying the link between the Sturdy team and the SN10 core team is noted as important for transparency.
Governance. Operates under Bittensor's root governance, Yuma consensus, but subnet-specific parameters.
Controlled by the subnet creator. And the analysis specifically highlights the unknown path to decentralizing this control as a key point to watch.
So participation is designed decentralized, but initial control might be centralized.
That's the takeaway. Potential centralization points, oracles, archive nodes, Sturdy's dominance maybe, Yuma DCG influence, and that subnet creator control. The Yuma link raises fair questions about autonomy versus strategic management.
How do we track success? KPIs.
Active miners validators, total TAO staked in SN10, transaction volume throughput, quality output, yield versus benchmarks, diversity, growth trends, and comparison to peers, other subnets, external aggregators. Data often unwanted stats.
And that DTAO model, again, alpha inflation versus value from stake utility.
Ah.
Plus, clarity needed on that 18% operator alpha.
Okay, bringing it all together, the comprehensive risk assessment from the analysis. Major dangers.
Technical. Smart contract bugs, SN10 sturdy underlying pools, and that lack of explicit SN10 audit is high risk. Algorithm flaws, validator errors, oracle risks, network issues, Bittensor scaling, DDoS.
Economic, yield underperformance versus competitors, TAO price volatility, huge impact, underlying asset volatility, liquidity risks, pools, alpha token, high ETH gas fees, failure to attract user capital via Sturdy, concentration risks, stake alpha.
Governance. Over-centralized control. Subnet creator, lack of transparency, conflicts of interest, negative Bittensor root changes.
Adoption, failure to attract skilled participants, low end user uptake via Sturdy, intense competition.
Market. Broad crypto downturns, shifting narratives, negative Bittensor sentiment.
Regulatory, adverse regulations, DeFi, AI, legal uncertainty.
And these risks are all connected, right? A tech failure hits finances, adoption, perception.
Absolutely. The analysis also outlines scenarios. Best case, premier optimizer, high adoption value. Base case, sustainable niche, moderate performance growth. And worst case, failure to perform attract users, stagnation, potential loss.
Okay, the bottom line, what's the overall investment conclusion from this analysis?
The thesis. It's a novel AI-driven DeFi approach on Bittensor with strong backing, Yuma DCG, and a real-world path, Sturdy. Potential for sustainable advantage if execution is strong and network effects build.
Key upsides summarized.
Innovative DeFi application, potential for superior yield, strong Yuma DCG backing, clear real-world utility path, TAO incentive alignment. Key downsides, red flags summarized.
Critical. No explicit confirmation of independent security audits for SN10 itself. Intense competition, significant execution risk, early-stage limited track record, heavy dependence on Sturdy success, market regulatory risks, unclear core team identity.
So, risk-reward, high potential reward, but currently skewed towards higher risk. due to the early stage competition, execution risk, and especially that critical security audit information gap.
Which leads to the final recommendation in the analysis.
Neutral with a cautious outlook. The analysis says this caution is warranted because it's early, competitive, execution is key, and that crucial security audit status for SN10 needs clarity.
So investing here is a multi-layered bet on
The team Yuma executing well, the competitive AI model actually working better, sturdy integrators attracting real capital, Bittensor's health, and navigating the market regulatory landscape. A lot has to go right.
what specific milestones, according to the analysis, would shift that cautious outlook.
The absolute must-have favorable trigger. Publication of comprehensive, positive, independent security audits specifically for Sturdy Subnet 10. Non-negotiable, basically. Beyond that. Demonstrable sturdy protocol traction, like significant TVL, maybe 25-50M. Measurable, consistent yield outperformance versus benchmarks over months. Clear growth and quality miners validators. More transparency on team roadmap. A credible path to decentralized governance.
Unfavorable triggers, things that would reinforce caution or turn negative.
Failure on audits or security incidents. Prolonged underperformance or sturdy failing. Stagnation in participants. Negative Bittensor AO news. Superior competitors emerging. Adverse regulations hitting home.
So the analysis concludes. Maintain caution until those positive triggers hit, especially the security audits. Promise exists, but requires close watching and validation.
That sums up the core findings well.
This deep dive really highlights just how ambitious SN10 is. Trying to merge this cutting-edge decentralized AI competition with the very practical, very high-stakes world of optimizing financial yield.
It's definitely complex, a real balancing act between driving innovation and ensuring that fundamental need for security and reliability when assets are involved.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Sturdy Subnet.
My pleasure. Always interesting stuff happening in the Bittensor ecosystem.
As we finish up, here's something to think about. SN10 is fundamentally built on the belief that this competitive, decentralized intelligence can outperform traditional methods. But when that intelligence is supposed to manage real money, trust and security become non-negotiable. So how does the Bittensor model, by actively fostering this intense algorithmic competition, uniquely try to square that circle, balancing the relentless drive for innovation and performance with the absolute requirement for safety and reliability in finance? There's a really fundamental tension right at the heart of this whole endeavor.